Welcome, everybody, and thank you for your patience. We'll call to order the July 18th, 2017 meeting of the Santa Rosa City Council. Madam Clerk, can you announce the roll, please?
Let the record show that all council members are present.
And can we have a report on the...
With the exception of Councilmember Oliveras and Councilmember Schwedhelm. Thank you.
That went right past me. Ms. City Attorney, a report on closed session, please.
Yes, closed session item number 2.1 was withdrawn and not heard. Closed session item 2.2, the council gave direction to labor negotiators.
Thank you. We have no proclamations or presentations, no staff briefings. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report tonight?
Nothing to report.
And Ms. Gallagher?
Nothing to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Any statements of abstentions from council? Mr. Sawyer?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be abstaining from 11.1, which are the minutes from June 6th, a meeting that I did not attend.
All right. Mr. Vice Mayor?
I'll be abstaining from item 12.6 on the consent calendar. Actually, recusal.
And Ms. Combs?
I'll be abstaining from 12.7 out of abundance of caution, as I live kind of near enough to just outside the area for official requirement of recusal for the golf course, but close enough that I feel uncomfortable, so I'm going to recuse on that item.
All right. And we'll move on to mayor's and council's reports. Who wants to start? Nothing? Nothing? Ms. Combs? Make it good. You got to do it for all of us.
I had a wonderful time on Saturday. I rode as many buses as I could. Again, I have done this previously, trying to see how the new reimagined city bus system is working. And previously, I have missed connections, like almost every connection I had planned. This time, I was successful at making every connection as planned. It was a very good experience. I talked to people on the buses. You know, some people have to walk a little further. Some people have a great stop. I had a very excellent experience on our city buses. And I wanted to compliment the city manager and staff on the bus service, reimagining and how it's working out. I was just really astounded at the experience that I had and at the positive comments that the other bus riders were making on Saturday. So it was a thrill to make all my connections. At one instance, it was volunteered to me by another person sitting on the bus that it's possible to ask a driver to call ahead and confirm that you can make a connection. And so we asked, and they did. And I understand it wasn't just for a council member, but that other people on the bus knew that they could do that. So I want to say that that's great. Obviously not so long as to make them delayed in their schedule, but just to confirm that we were going to make the overlap right. It was a fun day, and I want to thank you again, reimagining. I have a couple things I noticed that I'll send in an email, but overall the experience was vastly improved over the last time I did it. So I want to thank you.
Good. That was a good report. We'll move on to matters from the council regarding future agenda items. Do you want to introduce this, Mr. McNally?
So it's 10.2.1, request for agenda item to consider revisiting the total tax and assessments of 14% to reallocate funding. And this is to see if there's enough interest on the council to schedule it for a future conversation amongst the council members.
Ms. Combs, this was your request. Do you have anything to add?
Briefly, that I want to make sure that the motion includes that we revisit our 9% TOT, the 3% PBIA, and the 2% county TBIA as a package, that we want to look at all three of those items, and if staff can bring us back more information about sort of the reality of our ability to maneuver or not maneuver within those three.
Do you want to make that a motion?
Okay. I'm moving that we have a council discussion regarding the 14% TOT, 14% total amount, with the reviewing the 9% TOT, the 3% BIA, and the 2% county TBIA.
So typically, this is a motion to consider the item at a future conversation and then
Yes.
give staff the direction that you want the staff to
Okay.
pursue to support the item.
At the next time, I just want to make sure that it's agendized in such a way that any of those three could be discussed.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Is that clear as mud? Okay.
Your second? Question, Mr. Tibbetts.
I'm willing to second the motion because I was the one who seconded it the first time. And I had the chance to sit down with Brad to talk about our own 3% BIA. My concern and why I seconded the last one was because I really was concerned about the Sonoma County Tourism 2% BIA and what impact and what the ROI for the city is on that. I've spoken with Brad, who's relayed the information to Tim. Tim's going to bring back something for our staff that I assume will come back in an email that will kind of highlight how their lead generation has resulted in TOT revenue for the city as well as sales tax revenue. So I'm happy to second it if that gets the information back to the full council, but that was my driving concern, is just to be able to quantify what our $1.2 million is getting us as far as a return on that investment.
We'd be happy to forward any information that comes in between now and the next time you consider this in moving forward a staff assignment in August. So right now, we're not in a discussion, we're in a agendizing for a future agenda.
And I want to be clear, I just want us to be able to have the discussion about each of the items in clarification. I am not making a motion with regard to which item we do whatever we do with it to. Thanks.
I'm happy to still second.
All right. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also want to give sort of a clarification also with my colleagues' comments for what kind of data is helpful to me in this conversation.
That'll come at the future conversation. This is so you can get into this conversation. It's a publicly noticed, and then you'll give staff an assignment. We're not preparing a report at the next item. This is for you to all have a conversation, and then we would do subsequent assignments for that council member. Just so I want to make sure that's clear in the process right now.
Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification on what I'm reading here, is it accurate that this is to target tourism service workers? Is that piece accurate?
My intention, yes, was that I was looking for a source of funding specific to tourism service workers.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Your votes, please. That has 4 ayes and 1 no, the no being Mr. Sawyer. Thank you. Approval of minutes. Mr. Sawyer is abstaining from 11.1.
Yes.
Any other abstentions, corrections, or additions to the minutes? Okay, those will be approved as submitted. Move on to consent.
Item 12.1, motion, fare free city bus service for Ironman Santa Rosa. Item 12.2, resolution, local support for One Bay Area Grant 1 Transit Performance Initiative Program grant application. Item 12.3, resolution, request for authorization for submittal of One Bay Area Grant OBAG 2, applications for the pavement rehabilitation of various streets and the design of the Highway 101 bicycle and pedestrian bridge. Item 12.4, resolution, cooperative purchase of buses. Item 12.5, resolution, First Amendment to Interagency Agreement F000680 with Sonoma County for mail services. Item 12.6, resolution, extension of proclamation of local homeless emergency. Item 12.7, resolution First Amendment to Bennett Valley Municipal Golf Court Management and Operations Agreement. Item 12.8, professional services agreement with Cannon Parkin for facilities assessment and maintenance analysis. Item 12.9, resolution contract extension, 9th Amendment and first extension to F000799 Golden Gate Landscape Management, Inc. And item 12.10, resolution approval professional services agreement for Renee Sloan Holtzman Sakai LLP for employment litigation defense. I have two comments on the consent items. Under item 12.9, I just wanted to read something that was communicated to the council today for a matter of the record, so it's there for clarity. The item that was continued from last week, this agreement is proceeding today in order to ensure we have no gaps in service while we rebid this work. Our plan is to issue an RFP for landscaping services. The vendors will be asked to provide 2 proposals for the services. One proposal will be the use of industry standard products, and the second will be using those that comply with the Russian River friendly guidelines, which we will forward to council so they have that. And by receiving 2 proposals for the services, we will be able to report back to council on the impact and allow the council to make informed decisions based on budget realities. We expect to get the bid out to the public within 90 days. So our intent is to rebid and bring that new response back for council for future consideration. Also on item 12.8, I had some concerns about seismic assessment. Those will be brought forward in a separate consideration, but to not slow the assessment process down, which is really necessary for our facilities, we're proceeding with this one, but you will see an item at a future date that addresses the seismic, or if I'm able to extend the contract with the seismic consideration under my own signature, I will be advancing that. But seismic is part of our assessment process. I had some questions about the seismic capabilities, but we will be doing those seismic assessments in addition to the assessment work that's outlined in the contract.
Thank you, Mr. McGlynn. Councilor, are there questions on the consent items? Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 quick questions. One is on item 12.1. I love this, the free bus rides around the Ironman event. My one question is really for our representative to the SMART board, that the free train rides actually end the weekend prior. And this might be an opportunity, if we could ask, to really see how the SMART train could be implemented to utilize or to grow these events and to help with traffic issues surrounding these events. So it might be worth asking if we could allow one more day of the train rides for people to test out in conjunction with a city event. Just wanted to put that one out there, and I don't know if that would be possible.
I think that's a fine idea. We don't have a representative on the SMART board, but we can communicate with the SMART board.
I think that would be great. On item 12.9, I want to thank staff for bringing this back so quickly and explaining to us what was happening with it. I will be really interested to see the Russian River friendly proposal that's there, and just want to make sure that it will include the neonicotinoids and the glyphosate that we had discussed, but happy to see that when it comes through. Thank you.
Ms. Combs.
Thank you. I have a question about 12.4. Also, during my recent bus ride, I discovered that the county buses had Wi-Fi, and the county buses had a UPS port, USB port, so that it was possible for one of us whose phones died to recharge on county, but neither of these were possible on city. And I'm wondering if that's this may be not the right buses for that. I don't know if there's a difference in the bus services we're providing or the buses we're buying, but if it's possible to have Wi-Fi in our future contracts.
Councilmember Combs, we have been investigating the potential of incorporating Wi-Fi. I do believe we've been discussing with the proposed vendor the potential of incorporating Wi-Fi into the bus. I do have staff here that are involved if they have any additional comments.
And is there also a port so that you can charge your phone or USB?
I'm not aware that we were incorporating that, but allow me to have
Okay.
Beth Cranda come down.
And I
provide
must say it was a
additional.
pleasure that the Smart Train had these features.
Good afternoon, thank you. There are no USB ports on the new buses that we're purchasing because it's an additional expense and it comes along with the maintenance of it as well. But in the future, we are investigating Wi-Fi for our buses, and that wouldn't be purchased through the bus procurement, but through IT strategies.
Okay. I would like to encourage us to relook at the ability to charge or to get USB on the buses as well. And I thank you for looking for the Wi-Fi. I appreciate that. With item 12.8, I'm just wondering the extent of, I appreciate that you're bringing forward seismic. I'm glad to hear that's coming too. Does this include properties that the city owns but that are not in direct use by the city, like Sam Jones Hall that has a number of, like a leaking roof?
So we made the decision early on that we were going to incorporate all 115 city-owned structures, city-owned and maintained structures, some of which are occupied buildings, some of which are just shade structures,
Okay.
all of which fall underneath our building maintenance division. So all 115 structures will be looked at. That does include Sam Jones Hall. It includes libraries. It includes other facilities that are owned by the city that may be utilized by other providers.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that. And I have a question about 12.9, which I'm delighted to hear the new information. Can you clarify for me, if we approve this contract, it's for a year, does the rebid information that comes in 90 days change the future contract, or does it change the existing contract, or do we live with the contract for a year?
As you recall from last week, there are two areas in the contract that allow us to get out of the contract. One of them is we can cancel for convenience, and that would be the clause we would use if we are done with the RFP process sooner. What we are, the 90 days, I think you're a little confused in that, is that's when we can get the RFP out.
Oh, I'm
It
sorry.
will
I thought the
take-
RFP was coming back in
Right,
90
no,
days.
that's when it would be released because it is a very big project. And then it would probably remain on the streets for about a month because, again, the Russian River Friendly Landscape Guidelines is a very thick document that they'll need to understand in order to bid properly. So we're going to allow an amount of time for that. So it is a long process, but if we are done sooner than a year, we will cancel the existing contract for convenience and enter the new contract.
Before we go into more detail in the future, after we've had a contract out that talks about the Russian River Friendly Guidelines, since I don't have a copy, I have seen guidelines, and I don't know if it's those guidelines, that allow the use of, for there's a Roundup type product, but not after the ridge of the crest going toward the river, that there's a distance or a geographic feature. So I'm wondering do the Russian River Friendly Guidelines completely eliminate neonicotinoids and glyphosates, or does the Russian River Guidelines specify only adjacent to rivers? Just so that do we know?
Again, we're working out of the product that the Water Department has been working with the BPU on. I want to forward that document to the entire council so you can see that document. I believe there are considerations that are played into that. I don't want to say that that's specifically example, but I believe that there are examples of how do you manage in certain locations, what are you taking into consideration, how do you assess a piece of property. Yes, so I think that that what you've cited is likely part of the whole the Russian River management document, but I want to make sure you all have a chance to see that document and review that document as we move forward. And again, if there are questions about the document, that's where council could get us into a conversation about that document. But our intent if the document meets with council's expectations, is to move forward under that document, but we have to move that document from a document to a request for proposals, and that takes some time as we look at our own spaces and evaluate our spaces. But the intent is to move forward on a process that addresses this issue. There may be future conversations that you all want to get into based on getting the document, but we need to move forward because we're going to be without service very, very shortly, but the intent is to meet the council's goal on this particular item.
I understand the need to move forward, and it's my intention to move forward with this item. My concern is that the Russian River friendly guidelines don't fully address playground areas, that we may have additional need to go beyond the scope of that document for playgrounds.
And that's exactly where the staff will have to look at the intent versus what is actually a practical application within a park setting. And so that's also why it'll take some time to move from through, the RFP is not going out tomorrow. The RFP is, the intent is to try to get it out within 90 days.
Thank you.
Mr. Tibbetts.
I have a question on item 12.4 for Director Nutt. Thank you, Director. As you know, I wanted to ask you about the buses. We're going to purchase 3 new diesel for our trucks, for our 40-foot trucks for our fleet, for an amount of not to exceed $1.4 million for about $473,000 apiece. I'm a really big fan of GHG-free or GHG-limited vehicles, specifically electric vehicles, and a lot of technology is rapidly advancing in the field of public transportation, electric in buses through inductive charging, longer ranges, the concept of using inductive changes for lower range buses to just continually circulate them throughout the city. And I just wanted to ask you, it's not my intent to derail this tonight at all. I'm prepared to vote to support us acquiring these 3 new vehicles, but of these 3 vehicles that we're going to be replacing, which are going to have, I think if I read the staff report correctly, 12-year expectation of useful life. We've done a good job of using ours for 17 years. But the other kind of train of thought in the field is that by 2030, all public agencies are going to be purchasing electric buses. And so these buses might continue on past that point, but what are we doing to anticipate the change and conversion into having an electric bus fleet?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Tibbetts, staff's been working pretty hard to become invested in the electrical equipment. We'd be happy to go into a very detailed conversation here in this fall so that we can bring all the council members up to speed as the activities that we've been doing. Staff's been working extra hard to try to understand exactly what those products are, what the ramifications of bringing those products into the organization are, what the longevity and life are. In the meantime, as you mentioned, we feel because of the age of our fleet, we're sort of hamstrung and we need to continue to move forward to try to replace vehicles. We currently have 12 vehicles that aren't within our current service life. This would take 3 of those vehicles off of the road and bring in new vehicles in an effort to try to continue to provide high quality service with our equipment. So we're hoping that we can move forward with this. We've been told by the vendor that our timing is spot on because there's a very large agency in the Bay Area that has a very large purchase that would come in immediately after us. If we miss the window that we're in right now, we could be waiting an additional couple of years in order to get new buses on. With that said, we'd be very happy to come back and talk in more depth about the electric vehicle options, what that means for us, and how we want to get into that in the future.
So as part of the infrastructure conversation and the 21st century operating model, the staff's been working really hard to bring forward an item for consideration this fall as a study session about the entire where we're going around this issue on electric vehicles and electric infrastructure. So I think you can look forward to that this fall. That's part of the plan. Obviously, we're often planning while we're operating, and I think that's one of the issues we're facing right now is there's an operational need as we engage in the planning exercise. But that is really part of staff's hard at work, and we're preparing to bring that forward for our conversation for the council.
That's great. I think that'd be good. I'd love to hear about it. I have a feeling we all would. I just want to point out really quickly while you're here, just doing some preliminary research, there's a couple of buses out there that are actually, one called the E-Bus 22, which seats 22 people, which I believe would probably satisfy the need of a lot of our routes as far as occupancy. It's selling for $395,000 a unit, which is actually already cheaper than the diesel unit that we're purchasing through this cooperative agreement. I have no idea about the validity or the quality of these buses, but being able to really look at this model going forward, I think would be good for the city. 26% apparently of human activity, GHG-related human activity, comes from use of transportation, and 4% of that is from bus use alone. So I don't know if that scales down nationally to our city level, but I think that'd be right in line with our climate action goals as well.
No, we've definitely identified that transit is one of our largest GHG issues that we need to address, and transit itself and the vehicles we operate are something that we would like to see moving forward with. But that's why we've been trying to undertake a comprehensive strategy so that we know exactly what we're doing when we get into it. That's what we'll come and present to you this fall. We'll be working with the staff to try to set up that program and be able to give you a really good view of what it means for us as we step into electric vehicles.
Thank you, Director Nutt. I appreciate your time.
Okay, if that's all the questions, I have a few cards on consent items. We'll start with Cheryl Parkinson, followed by Ann Seeley.
Good afternoon, Mayor Coursey and council members. I'm here to support the extension of the homeless emergency proclamation. I think the proclamation reflects the reality that we have today, and not extending would be equivalent to declaring there is no longer an emergency. The proclamation helps both the city and the homeless service agencies to remind the community that the homeless population remains in an emergency situation. Unfortunately, I forgot to state my name. I'm Cheryl Parkinson. I'm the executive director of the Living Room, and we really feel the emergency declaration has helped us make inroads with people who didn't really recognize the situation as being as serious as it is, and we really applaud the proclamation, and are really hopeful it's going to be extended. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Seeley. She'll be followed by Elaine Holtz.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Ann Seeley speaking for Concerned Citizens for Santa Rosa. With regard to the landscaping contract, you have a problem, but I'm confident that you can find a solution. I'm unclear what the timing is of what the city manager has suggested, whether it's to happen before this contract takes place or where it's to occur. But I know that it will become more and more evident to the public that this landscaping company's use of Roundup and possibly the newer neonicotinoids is a danger to the public. You will be locked into this contract that's before you unless some modifications are made. I've looked at the contract that was on your website, but not being a legal expert, I couldn't come up with any language to suggest to you that would allow you to direct the contractor to, in the next year, reduce or eliminate glyphosate in parks and near schools. But I'll bet your legal staff can come up with such language, and I hope that you direct them to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine Holtz, followed by Richard Canini.
Hello, everybody. My name is Elaine B. Holtz. I'm a 40-year resident here at Sonoma County. I don't normally give you my qualifications as a person, but I am a 25-year retired corporate sales manager who has managed hundreds of contracts. I also worked for Sonoma County CETA for 3 years, where I helped write the RFPs. I also evaluated them, and I also made recommendations. And I was proud to say that I actually recruited Helen Rudy to be on that board. I'm here to talk on 12.9, and I am requesting a formal answer. In other words, I feel as a citizen I have a right to a formal answer. I reviewed the contract, and I am so miffed. I did not elect the staff. I elected you folks to represent me, a homeowner, a concerned citizen, a mother, a grandmother, and maybe even a great-grandmother. And I cannot understand why you can't make a request on this renewal that they look at if they can get rid of glyphosate and some of the other carcinogenics that they're using on our plants. I have literally trained my dog to stay away from trees because my vet told me dog cancer is on the rise. I spoke to somebody at one of the climate groups, and they told me that Sonoma County has the highest level of cancer among children. And I also heard rumblings that the way they're going to resolve this not being able to make any requests is that we might put out an RFP for other people. Well, now I'm going to put on my hat as a corporate sales manager. I would be pissed off if I was this company and those recommendations were not requested. I'd say, wait a minute, I gave you all this service, and you're not even giving me an opportunity. And we're not saying the public, from what I heard on the recording, the public is not asking you to tell them to do it. They're requesting that you ask a question is, how can we do it at this period of time? I do not understand. I'm even looking, here's the contract right here. And there's a section called amendment. What does amendment mean? It means that there were other considerations made from the first contract. So why can't there be an amendment made here that says that you're requesting that they research and see how they can go ahead and eliminate these poisons from our county, from our city? It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. So I am appealing to you to make the request. And also, if you make the request, it gives you an opportunity to see exactly what the costs are going to be, what it's going to entail to change this kind of situation. And I want to encourage you with one last thing. I did an interview on www.womenspaces.com on the lobbyists who actually went and made a statement that they on July 7, 2017, they listed glyphosate on the list. Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, it's a very important subject. Our children are being poisoned, and I think an extra second is not going to kill them.
You're next.
Greetings. Nice to be back. In regards to the matter of the poisons, what happened to the chosen spot of nature? You working against that? You trying to kill it off? This used to be chosen spot of nature? Okay, maybe that needs a revision or an addendum. And read the matter of the buses. How about putting some general fund money into those buses? Other jurisdictions do, you don't. Buses are significant to the public, and cities that have good bus service lower the cost of living for their citizens. This is well established, lowest cost of those greenhouse gases, it reduces traffic congestion. A bus will carry, what, 40 people? 40 cars per bus. So general funds, I think that'd be a good thing to put in city bus. Subsequent to my letter to MTC bad-mouthing your reimagining, which to me was a nightmare that you imagined, I was invited to meet the boss of City Bus. It was horrible. It was tragic. It was traumatized. During the entire hour meeting that she granted me, she did not mention passengers once. She did not mention drivers once. She was all about the money. Money, money, money. Now, we know that money is essential, but otherwise it's unimportant. I think you need to refocus the head of City Bus. And a message from the trenches of City Bus. Old drivers are being squeezed. Apparently, they're trying to squeeze the older drivers out. Some of your best drivers, some of your very best drivers, they have a bid system where they put in for the route they want, and senior person gets the route. She is not honoring that, from what I hear. And the union is not helping them. Some of these drivers have been with you for 30 years or more. They know their route. They like their route. They know their passengers. Their passengers know them. They know to look for somebody running to the bus stop because they know the usual ones. And they're excellent drivers. But apparently, it seems, somebody, maybe the new lady head of buses, is trying to squeeze them out. And that's wrong. And she's not honoring the bid system, and they're not getting any help from their union. And nobody asked me to come here. I came here on my own volition. I think you should correct that. Thank you ever so much.
That's all the cards I have. Mr. Tibbetts, you have this item.
I move item 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, 12.7, 12.8, 12.9, and 12.10 of the consent calendar and waive further reading of the text.
Second.
Excuse me, I think you want to read 12.6 and skip 12.7, because 12.7 is the one I'm recusing from.
I think you both have. You 12.
Yeah. Okay, so you need to be recused from 12.7?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to redo that motion. I move item 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, 12.8, 12.9, and 12.10 of the consent calendar and waive further reading of the text.
Second.
That's all but 12.6 and 12.7. Your votes, please. That has 5 ayes.
And I'll recuse myself for 12.7 and 12.6.
So I'll move consent items. Do we have to separate these?
Yeah, we do.
I'll move consent item 12.6 and wait for the reading.
Second.
Your votes, please.
Going to reset.
And that has 4 ayes.
I'll move consent item 12.7 and wait for the reading.
Second.
And your votes. And that passes with 4 ayes. Thank you. It not being 5 o'clock yet, we'll go to item 14.
Item 14.1. Report. Authorization to submit requests to Federal Highway Administration for installation of red bus only pavement markings in the downtown Santa Rosa area. Masood Sabarian, supervising engineer, presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Good to be here. If you bear for a few seconds, we'll load the PowerPoint presentation and give you a quick background while that's happening. In response to concerns from the transit operators and transit service representatives, we are looking at ways to reduce number of private vehicles entering the transit mall inadvertently or by mistake and navigate through the transit mall, which presents a level of danger to pedestrians and other bus drivers in the area using the transit mall. The presence of unauthorized vehicles creates significant safety concerns for the pedestrians as bus operators, as I mentioned. That would not be, they're not expecting private vehicles to be using the mall. The transit mall is regularly congested with buses from 5 different transit operators, as well as pedestrians that are navigating from one end of the mall to the other to catch a bus or transfer. by having unauthorized vehicles in the mall, we are creating a situation that exacerbate that safety concern. Right now, we have at the Santa Rosa Avenue and B Street left turn lanes that have bus only with white and black stencil, which is a standard. And this is on northbound Santa Rosa and Second Street, and southbound B Street at Second. As the picture shows, those are the two southbound and northbound approaches that the buses are supposed to be using to enter the transit mall and in order to unload and load passengers. What we are proposing is to highlight those bus-onlys with the bus-only red pavement markings, which are being used as an experimental basis nationwide in multiple jurisdictions, including San Francisco for bus services, bus lanes. And again, it's not because it's a new idea, it has to go through the Federal Highway Administration as an experimental basis. And we will be obligating ourselves as a staff to report every 6 months to the Federal Highway Administration and California Traffic Control Devices Committee about the effects and the results of that. As part of this, we will be collecting data beforehand to see how many people are mistakenly entering the transit mall, and then we will be reporting back every 6 months to FHWA and CTCDC about the effect and positive effect of this. We are expecting it to be effective because it highlights the problem, and most likely it will reduce the number of people that are entering the transit mall mistakenly. We're asking for your authorization to move this. It's basically the two left turn pockets will have red only, bus only pavement markings in red, as the picture previously shows. And the benefits of it, we are hoping to reduce confusion with drivers who may otherwise in the transit mall in error, and enhance transit mall traffic flow, and of course with that brings safety to pedestrians and then the bus operators. We are asking for the authorized to submit requests to FHWA for installation of red bus only pavement markings in downtown Santa Rosa, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Other questions, Council? Mr. Rogers.
Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I have no problem with this. I was just curious about the cost. So it's $9,500 is the quoted cost for what appears to me to be red paint and some staff time, whereas we just approved free ridership for an entire day for the entire bus system was only $1,700. So I'm wondering if you could give me just a little bit more information about why the $9,500.
It will be more than paint. It will be thermoplastic that will last several years, and then will be coming out of our maintenance budget, but we're already maintaining those bus-only services. There will be a slight increase on that cost, but because of the red pavement stencils. But this will be over the next 3-4 years or more. And again, this is being an experimental basis. If it goes to an interim approval and finally approved by the Federal Highway Administration nationwide, then that will be basically a long-lasting project that far exceeds the cost that we were paying today. And of course, that's the high end of the cost. So I'm expecting that cost to be half as much. We're including the staff time that is already maintaining those payment markings on a yearly or a bi-yearly basis.
I appreciate that, and glad to hear that. Could you explain for me really fast what thermoplast is?
Thermoplastic paint is a thicker material that lasts a lot longer against the elements like sunshine or wet pavements and other things. Regular paint washes away because we don't use lead paint anymore. It's water-based, and after about a year or so with elements, it will basically disappears. Thermoplastic has depending on the traffic that goes on it, it will be a lot longer lasting, so anywhere from 5 to 10 years, but with the buses on it, with heavier equipment, it may be around 4 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tibbetts.
quick question. You have it going for northbound on Santa Rosa Avenue, and then I think it's southbound on B Street. Just out of curiosity, why not also go southbound on Santa Rosa Avenue and northbound on B? If I recall, those are still both two-way streets.
Right, correct. That's a valid and very good question. Those are right turn through movements. We cannot paint those for bus only. We're hoping that at least that most of the time people are making a right turn observe and see those signs faster. A lot of times buses are making a left turn from those two left turn pockets. There are cars behind them and they don't see it. They see a bus go into a left turn pocket. The first week I moved to Santa Rosa, I did that mistake myself because I thought if the bus can go, I can go. And then I quickly realized I'm in error, and of course.
Yeah, I've definitely done it too. Thank you.
Ms. Combs.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. I wasn't sure what the sequence would be. I want to thank you for bringing forward this kind of interesting experiment and finding a way to fund doing this kind of experimental traffic pavement marking. I appreciate that we're doing this kind of forward thinking about it. If it weren't terribly expensive, I would love to see it through the full transit mall to reinforce what it means. But I appreciate that it's mighty expensive paint. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, council? I do have one card on this, Mr. Canini.
Quite a bit of bus stuff. Excellent point on the right turn lanes. You weren't looking at my paper, were you? Okay. There is a problem with the right turn lanes in the direction, particularly on B Street, because the sign in the transit mall that says "Do not enter" is blocked when there is a bus in that bay. I brought this to City Bus's attention, and I guess they're still working on it. This is true. And as you may know, we used to have arbors across the entrance to the transit mall, and the city spent $3 million to uglify the transit mall and took the arbors down and stuff like that, which was a better delineation. So you're absolutely right. Something more needs to be done about the right turn lanes and the left turn. Red lanes experiment? They're in San Francisco. I mean, maybe I missed part of this presentation. Red bus lanes are nothing new. They're all over the place. Not only red bus lanes, but you're on the Jersey Turnpike, they'll even paint the lane you take to the Geo Wash Bridge. You don't even have to watch for signs, just stay in your painted lane. You think you're the first? Well, you don't have to answer that. Red lines? Oh, no, no, no. Gary has them. Okay, now, private cars in the transit mall are a problem. This was brought to your attention when the AT&T building was going to be remodeled into a museum on the square. A traffic study was done. It showed it to be a hazard. It showed the least worst condition is turning into those parking lots, and it did not meet sight distance. They didn't even talk about turning out, which any engineer would know is even worse in that condition. So yeah, private cars should never be in there, and there is a legal document keeping them out. Your staff is aware of that, of course. They did their homework. There's a legal document signed by a previous director of public works and a city attorney and filed at the county recorder's office. Okay, well, that's about it. I'll send you my bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canini. Mr. Rogers, you have this. I'm sorry. Did you have a card? Take the microphone. Mr. Ells.
Forgive me, there are occasions where extensive areas are painted, whether they're green for bicycles or they're different things. There are, as Mr. Canini mentions, the technical aspects of something. With regard to the surface of the asphalt, it's very important that it have the braking capacity to stop your vehicle, that you have that traction. The different kinds of asphalt, A lot of different asphalts right now are really poor at that. They're not acting as good braking materials. They're too fine. They get slippery when it's wet. They're slippery when they're wet, but they get a lot more slippery when they're wet. When you do that with a painted surface, you have no traction. So while it may be important to have some delineations, you don't want to have too much paint out there, and those paints need to have surfaces on them that actually have friction surfaces, whether they're sand or other types of materials. This is very important. Those paints get very expensive. The way they're applied now and other things to have them maintain taking them up, or even sometimes just having the friction over them tears up the asphalt when they come up. There's a lot of expense to those things, so it's not simple, it's not easy, and particularly the friction aspect, you don't want to have a whole width of the area painted very often, or at least for very long, because you have no traction on that if you're trying to stop. This is particularly going up to an intersection. So for you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
All right, I will make a motion to authorize the Director of Transportation and Public Works to submit a request for experimentation to California Traffic Control Devices Committee and Federal Highway Administration to add red-colored bus-only pavement markings at 2 locations in downtown Santa Rosa.
Second.
Council, your votes? That passes with 5 ayes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Gomez, do we have cards for public comment on items not on the agenda? First speaker is Patty Torza. She'll be followed by Colleen Fernald.
Good evening. My name is Patty Torza, and I live on Slater Street, where Lewis is. My neighbor, Scott Chapman, stood before you last week to protest the construction of a 7-story Verizon cell tower that will negatively impact more than 60 homes in the JC residential neighborhood. He indicated that property values go down 20 to 30% when cell phone towers are installed near residential homes. He indicated that a 7-story structure will stick out like a sore thumb no matter how well they disguise it as a tree. This could also set a precedence for future businesses to build as big, if not bigger, structures near us. If Verizon could do it, why can't we? And even though we cannot legally bring up health consequences, many independent studies show that there are a growing number of negative health impacts to people, especially children, that live within 400 feet of such a tower. We have gathered 63 signatures of homeowners and 25 of renters within 3 blocks of the proposed tower, and we are not done yet. Only 2 people did not sign when asked. Clearly, this neighborhood does not want this tower. We'd like to give the signed petitions to the council. Many of our neighbors who signed the petition are Verizon customers. We are not anti-corporation. We just think that Verizon picked an inappropriate spot for a cell phone tower that many residents said we don't need. There are other areas that they could consider, such as up in the rural cemetery or near the Home Depot, areas that would not affect people aesthetically or financially. Lastly, on a personal note, my wife works from home, which is 125 feet from the proposed tower. This is far too close for comfort, and I am concerned about her overall exposure. Radiation does not stay above in the sky. It permeates everything and everybody, above and below. We are asking the City of Santa Rosa to deny Verizon's application and to allow Verizon to continue their search for a more suitable location that will limit the impact on families and neighborhoods. Specifically, consider whether you would want a 7-story metal cell tower built in your backyard, and help us from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I give you the petitions?
Please give to the clerk.
Thank you.
Colleen Fernald, she'll be followed by Tony Giraldi.
Good afternoon. Let's see if I can bring some things to your table that we can all agree on. I know that would be novel, but let's see. Do you all know how the Vietnam War was ended? Anybody here? Just raise your hand if you know. What was it that actually got it to end? Now, we went to war without Congress declaring war because of one of Richard Nixon's dirty tricks, the War Powers Act, where instead of making an amendment to the Constitution that said only Congress can declare war, did that work around the Constitution. And how many times have they used that dirty trick to bankrupt us morally, physically, saying we're going to fund and use offense, not defense? Well, after 9/11, it happened. And there was only one person who stood on that floor of the House and said, no, this isn't okay. That was Barbara Lee. And time again, Barbara Lee has come to the floor and say, hey, we got to take those war powers back from the president. You know, Obama tried to give it back and Congress wouldn't do it. So now Barbara Lee has put it up there, just like with the Vietnam War. Because the way that one ended, it was the Appropriations Committee in the House. Christopher Dodd, in the very early days of videotape, I don't know where the context was, but I saw it on TV. I watched that argument before C-SPAN. We're just not going to give you the money to go to that war anymore. Woo-hoo! And really, was the world made that much worse because we got out of Vietnam? No, but my father lost his life from his service in constitutional war of choice with toxic ingredients like Agent Orange. So right now, we got a chance to do it. But what's in the way? Something we can agree on. Partisan politics has destroyed everything that it has made and continues to make America great. So you're supposed to be a nonpartisan body, right? This should be a nonpartisan issue. But you know they're going to play that game of just to make them look bad, not going to pass anything you want because it's your party. This is where your city, joining up in your league of cities with the county, the state, the country, working with every city in the same boat, can't take care of your basic infrastructure needs, et cetera, your pensions, because there's not enough money. And then you want grants, and you want FEMA money, but you want to make a sanctuary status, putting all that in jeopardy for something that's not legal. Unconstitutional wars of choice aren't legal. They are bankrupting us. Every time you go to the federal government for money, interest on the loan for the debt that we're in to go to other countries. All right? But if you stood up in a nonpartisan way and got every other city to join you, we're not going to fund unconstitutional wars of choice anymore. It's hurting our cities. Public Law 107-40, please ask Congressman Thompson and Huffman to support this in a nonpartisan way.
Giraldi.
Thank you.
Will be followed by Peter Chernoff.
Good evening, Mayor Corsi, members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to speak in front of you this evening. As a member of the Board of Directors of the Sonoma County Fair, I'm here to give you an update as far as the what's going to take place in 16 days with the start of our 81st Sonoma County Fair. We've got 11 days nonstop of continuous fair activity. As previous years, we were closed on Mondays. Not this year, we're going straight through, so there's not a situation where somebody's going to show up and anyways, the fair not open today, so it's August 3rd through the 13th. And we're celebrating a holiday every day. Holidays at the fair, from St. Patrick's Day to Valentine's Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Earth Day. It's one of the few, one of the many, I should say. Valentine's Day. That's going to be a great one because we're the Ferris wheel. If you choose to get married or renew your wedding vows, sign up and we'll do it on the Ferris wheel. It's definitely one of the highlights of the fair that I'm looking forward to. For the first time in 6 years, we're going to have horse racing on the opening day of the fair. So in conjunction with that, we normally have a hat day during the fair. And we're going to have Hat Day on opening day. And we're going to combine that with celebrating Easter. So if you don't feel like wearing your Kentucky Derby hat, you can wear your Easter bonnet to Hat Day. And we've got 8 days of horse racing during the fair, and then we have our bonus week with 3 additional days, the 18th, 19th, and 20th after the fair concludes. At the racetrack, we have new trackside tables and seats near the finish line. Coming back for, I believe it's the 9th year now, is the Derby Dog Dash, which will take place on the 2 Sundays of the fair. It's between horse races, we'll have the dogs out in the track, and they're always a fun sight to see them out there. The Hall of Flowers is looking fabulous. The theme, Holidays in Bloom, it's showcasing different holidays throughout the many seasons of the year. We do have the Hall of Flowers preview, which is the evening before opening day, Wednesday the 2nd. Proceeds support the Youth Egg Scholarship Fund. New carnival company this year, offering the latest stomach-turning popular rides. And second year in a row, we've got free concerts. No extra ticket at the Chris Beck Arena. Come to the community stage. We've got Axe Marshall Tucker Band. They're actually opening on the 3rd. Lauren Alana, War, Trent Harmon, what I understand to be one of the best Eagles tribute bands in the United States. They'll be there. Usual fair food will be there: lobster corn dogs, Krispy Kreme donut cheeseburgers, Art Aboletto's pasta, whirly birds. Gonna finish it off.
You've
Thursday,
almost
August
stopped
10th.
our hearts up here, Mr. Giraldi, just by mentioning those things.
Yeah, there we go. The Thursday, August 10th.
Need you to wrap up.
Absolutely. City of Santa Rosa Day. I understand city staff has received materials for you to enjoy the fair even more. Race 3 is the City of Santa Rosa race. Approximate time 2:15. Come down to the winner's circle if you want to bring your appointees. We'd love to have you there. Looking forward to seeing you at the fair.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Giraldi. Peter Cherneff, followed by Crystal Marie. And I'm not going to try the last name because I can't read it here.
Well, good afternoon. I usually speak to you from afar, but every once in a while I like to see the smiling faces and get up close and personal. So, synthetic telepathy, 24/7, all frequency delivery systems, cell phone towers, computers, computers, the towers everywhere exist. We're in a frequency soup, guaranteed to keep us subserviently acquiescent. Deborah Tavares spoke to you all a couple years back and gave you a lot of information that I imagine was set aside, which is too bad because maybe this is a bit more important than you've been led on to believe. Technology, Silicon Valley style, is destroying democracy in America itself. A second generation of kids addicted, controlled by artificial intel, frequency electronics. They don't know what it means to go out and play. And talk about children, and these Verizon tires look like trees. There's no birds in them. There's a reason for that. Human trafficking. The concept of scamming parents in the name of human trafficking and money. Children terrorized, terrified, being torn from a loving parent, while certain court untouchables thinks it's funny. Big money in a child-stealing system of abuse. Court adoptions and foster care and CPS with plenty of pedophiles and plenty of verifiable information nationwide. Even in this county, child snatching is abounding. Quite the history in California, I warn you. Even Bob Hope, back in the day, along with other famous movie stars, purchased children that were picked out ahead of time while they were still with their parents. And the parents that complain about this sort of thing, they become ostracized. They become not the victim, they become somehow the perpetrator, the person to keep the child away from. I can't begin to tell you how many cases I've reviewed over the last 10 years that follow this. Another great concern is the DSM-5 is coming out pretty soon. The DSM-4's got about, I don't know, 400 or 500 diagnoses, 350 pages. The DSM-5 is 800 pages plus, over 1,000 diagnoses. Every human emotion is categorized as a diagnosis, required to be medicated by the pharmaceuticals. Now you got all these kids graduating from school with these therapy degrees. I guess they're going to have a lot of jobs because these 1,500 FEMA camps could probably end up employing 15 to 20 each. But it's not funny whatsoever. This is part of like a Nazi program to separate children from their parents, and a lot of times these kids end up being abused. When you go to see your child in a situation like that, they're lethargic, they've lost interest, you don't know what to do. So I invite you to listen to the further speakers, and I would ask that you do the extraordinary step of stepping forward to assist.
Crystal Marie. You're going to have to help me with your last name. I can't read it here.
It's Zavala, my first time public speaking. My name is Crystal Marie Zavala, first of all. I very much love living in Santa Rosa. It's really, really beautiful. As an adult, I worked very, very hard. And
You have a very soft voice, so speak right into that microphone, please.
Okay. As an adult, I've worked very hard, and one of my directions have been investigation. I accomplished 600 hours of certification in law and investigations in my hometown, Los Angeles. My stepdad works for the VA, and my mother works steady 16 hours a day for the past decade. My professional interest has always been towards law enforcement since I had my son. As many of us are children in the world. As a single mother, I was subjected to a violent physical and mental abuse. About 8 months ago, during the last episode, I ran outside of my house with my daughter, and I called for help. The police came and arrested him. Thankfully, through extraordinary circumstances, very confusing, imposed upon me by CPS and Nan Johnson, who was supposed to be representing me, but never spent an hour of her time with me, not even before her trial. They completely disregarded a volume of pertinent documents that I provided, never even entered into the court. They have stolen my children, forcing me into a therapy session where multiple fabricated diagnoses of me, a stressed mother, burdening the loss of her children, who sought only to protect my healthy children, all of which was used against me to keep them from me for about 8 months. They did so 5 days before Christmas. During this whole process, they've acted like I'm the one who abused them and treated me as not a victim, but a violent person. With my background and concerns, especially after I represented myself, tired of not being explained the process, he sealed that court date, not allowing me to get the transcripts to send to an appellate court. With my background, I did research, and I found that nationwide, hundreds, if not thousands, of stories indicate a sophisticated version of human trafficking for profit, which I believe is in the name of CPS. I feel they hurt just as much, if not more than help.
Thank you, Ms. Zavala.
I need an independent intervention. I asked for new public representation and they denied me. Please help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dorothy Freiberg.
You said Dorothy Freeberg, right?
Freiberg, yes, please.
I thought I would be able to Can I pass this to you so you can look at these pictures?
Go ahead and speak into the microphone.
It's a document of my, okay. First, I got 3 points I want to make. I want to thank the Santa Rosa Police for interdicting the meth down by the library, because that's been all over. I take a shower on Morgan Street, and I told the staff who's doing it and when. And they're so overwhelmed with bodies that they can't even watch out for drug dealers. So I want to compliment the Santa Rosa Police for finding those bricks of meth. And the people, unfortunately, one of the guys that got busted still goes over there and gets haircuts, and it's attitude. Second point I want to make is, you remember me here before because I was deaf and I stepped on somebody else and got in before them and all that. I have the receipt for the towing of my car from Bennett Valley Senior Center, and it's coming up on a year, and I don't want to go to court. I want this settled. You know, if it was a parking ticket, it'd be $500 for me now. If I waited a year to pay a parking ticket, I would be underwater for it. And a second document is the photo of the actual parking place, and it was on like August 18th, a really hot day, one of the few places in the shade, and I got there early to get in the shade, and amen. Who can I go to? Who can I go to get this settled?
Ms. Freeberg, we can't get into a back and forth here, but staff will talk to you after you're done.
You're punting me?
Ms. Freeberg, this is a time for you to speak to the council. You have some time left.
Okay, I'll have to get a translation because maybe one of these women can tell me. All right, I had a third point and it slipped my mind. Oh, I want to thank you for supporting the homeless situation, and I just saw the police under the 6th Street overpass. Thank you for doing that, because it makes all of us look bad, and we're not all like that. We don't all just throw our garbage out. We don't all park on corners. Although, since I made this last complaint, I've been harassed by parking. But it's my own fault, because I was 15 minutes over. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Hanson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Last summer, I saw contract after contract given to private consulting firms to study projects that the involved city department should have been doing. The only one of 4 in which numbers were given to the public. Street widening project, 150 people impacted, 25 canvassed by the private consulting firm, yet the $436,000 contract was paid in full. Now I see it coming back. Contracts awarded to private companies to do the work our city department should be doing. Last week, you renewed a contract with Wells Fargo Bank, a bank that was just fined $100 million for fraud and fraud against their own customers. That's the epitome of bad taste. The end of last year, City Council voted raise for city employees, top to bottom, and now we see it coming back. When is this going to stop? When is this city going to realize the problems that we're facing as the United States? Raises after raises for city employees. $304 million brought in, half of that goes to city employees. And now you're bringing raises back. $2 million for landscaping in full view of 3,000 people living on the streets. Again, the epitome of bad taste. Let's take care of the problems we got before we start giving raises to people that should be doing the jobs you're subcontracting out. I've been watching this city council. I've been trying to learn. I've been coming to city councils for a year and a half. And I've come to the conclusion that we have a city council that's promoting their own personal agendas. Financial, I don't know about. But personal, yes. Courthouse Square, perfect example. Courthouse Square project was the definition of abuse of power. The City Council of 2016 holding the Earth Day celebration in Courthouse Square Park. Again, the epitome of bad taste. 29 redwood trees. The Bergstrom Fountain, now a parking lot. And you hold... Thank you.
That's all the cards I have. We'll move on to item 14.2.
Item 14.2, report. Approval of Memorandum of Understanding, Unit 17, Professional City Attorneys, SRCAA, an amendment to the fiscal year 2017-18 adopted budget within various funds. Gobu Gesamene, Human Resources Director, presenting.
Good afternoon. I have also June Garon, HR Analyst, with me to support in the presentations. We have three separate items on agreements that were listed separately on the agenda due to when tentative agreements were ratified by the various organizations. Each of these items that are before you, the actual MOUs are still in draft format. As I mentioned last time, there is still quite a bit of administrative cleanup that we will continue to work on, and where there might be something substantive, we will bring that back to your attention. With respect to, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. With respect to Unit 17, this is the professional attorneys group. The city's representatives and the representatives of the Unit 17 have met and conferred over their successor memorandum of understanding and have agreed on a 3-year contract that will run from July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020.
Unit 17 agreed to the following: a 3% increase in year 1, a 3% increase in year 2, and a 2.5% increase in year 3, which is tied to an economic reopener, which we discussed at the last council meeting, based on property and sales tax revenue. If the city fails to meet its property or sales tax revenue targets, then we will be reopening the contract to discuss the 3rd-year increase. And they also agreed to city contribution to retiree health of 0.25% of base salary per year for a total of 0.75%. Pushing the wrong thing. And then Unit 17 will also get the short-term disability effect beginning August 1st, 2017, and they will also be part of the Staff Development and Wellness Joint Labor Management Committee to discuss reimbursement program and a wellness program.
The recommendation before you from the Human Resources Department, excuse me, and City Manager's Office is to, by resolution, approve the Memorandum of Understanding for agreement on behalf of the employees of Bargaining Unit 17 professional attorneys, and to approve the expenditure increases indicated in the resolution. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councilor, are there questions on this? I don't see any questions. Any cards on this? Ms. Combs, I believe you have this.
I do. Resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa adopting a memorandum of understanding for and on behalf of the employees of the City of Santa Rosa Unit 17, professional attorneys represented by the Santa Rosa City Attorneys Association in affiliation with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Local Union Number 856 for a contract effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020, and amending the fiscal year 2017-18 adopted budget, and waive further reading of the text.
Second.
Council, your votes. That passes with 5 ayes.
Item 14.3, report adoption of wages, hours, and working conditions for employees in city units 10, executive management, 11, middle management, and unit 12, confidential, and amendment to the fiscal year 2017-18 adopted budget within various funds.
Thank you. These units are the executive management, middle management, and confidential units. They are not represented, so we are asking that you adopt the agreement, or I'm sorry, the document reflecting terms of employment. City staff have traditionally provided terms equitable to other bargaining units for these unrepresented groups. On July 26, 2016, your council approved wages, hours, and other terms and conditions of employment for these unrepresented units for the period of July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. The resolutions will provide for an update to be effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020.
And the unrepresented units will be receiving the same type of benefits that the Unit 17 did, which is 3%, 3%, and 2.5% over the life of the contract of cost of living adjustments, and also a contribution to either the retiree health account or the deferred compensation account of a total of 0.75% for the life of the contract. They will also be receiving the short-term disability beginning August 1st, and they will be participating in the reinstatement of the staff development and wellness program. Unit 11 will also be able to cash out administrative leave up to 40 hours annually, and Unit 12 will be able to cash out vacation up to 80 hours annually for employees with 10 or more years of service.
Human Resources and City Manager's Office recommends that council by resolution approve the wages, hours, and other terms and conditions of employment for units 10, 11, 12, and approve the requested expenditures on the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, council? Any cards? No cards on this? Who's got this one?
I think I do.
Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you. To introduce a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa adopting the wages, hours, and other terms and conditions of employment for employees in the city's Unit 10, Executive Management, Units 11 and 12, Middle Management, and Confidential, and amending the fiscal year 2017 through 2018 adopted budget. Waive further reading.
Second.
Your votes? And that passes with 5 ayes. 14.4.
Report approval of memorandum of understanding, Unit 9, Police Safety Management, and amendment to the fiscal year 2017-18 adopted budget within various funds.
Thank you. Here again, the city's representatives and representatives of Unit 9, which is police management, have met and conferred concerning the successor memorandum of understanding. Traditionally, police and fire management negotiate together. This year, however, fire management has opted to wait until negotiations with Unit 2 Fire conclude before moving forward. So this resolution pertains only to police management. The new contract will run July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2019 for a 2-year period.
And the police management has agreed to the same bargaining package as the police officers. They will be receiving 3% increases both years of the contract. There will also be an increase in employee contribution towards PERS retirement of 0.5% a year, which year 1, year 2, and then at the end of year 2, so a total of 1.5% over the contract term. And then the city will be also making a contribution to the retiree health stipend. And this gets a little complicated. Police officers and the police management contribute to the same retirement health stipend program, and that's based on a flat dollar amount, so it has to be the same dollar amount for both units. However, you do it by percentage, and so it ends up being more dollars for the police managers than for the police officers. And so they will be having the same dollar amount go to the police stipend account, and then, I'm not sure what's going on here. And then they'll have an additional percentage point go towards their deferred compensation account to make up for the difference.
Here, I do have an amendment to the resolution. The resolution should read 0.5, a combined contribution, and this is in the 3 bullet points talking about the economic factors in the resolution itself. It should read combined contribution of a 0.5% towards retiree health stipend and deferred compensation for both of the years listed there.
And then, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. And then the police managers, there's also be an increase to the lieutenant's on-call pay to $95 a day to make it consistent throughout the city. And the deferred compensation benefit will be expanded to include lieutenants and captains. Right now, it's just for sergeants.
Human Resources and the City Manager's Office recommend that the Council by resolution approve the Memorandum of Understanding for the agreement on behalf of the City's Bargaining Unit 9 Police Management and approve the requested expenditure increase as well as the amendment that I just read.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Rogers.
Just a quick request that now that we're getting towards the end of these negotiations, if we could get an updated figure, whether in the long-term financial policy committee or as information to the council, where our unfunded balance sits, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any questions? Mr. Tibbetts.
I move a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa adopting a memorandum of understanding for and on behalf of the employees in the City of Santa Rosa Unit 9 Police Safety Management, represented by the Santa Rosa Police Management Association, and for a contract effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2019, and amending the fiscal year adopted budget as amended.
Second.
Your votes? That passes with 5 ayes. Mr. McGlynn, could you remind us what employee groups still remain to reach agreement with?
Unit 2, which is fire, as well as the fire management unit.
Okay. Everybody else is in the barn, so to speak.
Correct.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 16, written communications. We have the final map of Taylor Mountain Place.
Yes. 16.1, final map, Taylor Mountain Place subdivision.
And do we have any cards for the final public comment? Very good. Thanks all. We will adjourn.